Hey, welcome into the Marketer's Best Friend. We're back with another episode, this time with Colby Hooley. Colby comes to us from Lively Inc., a startup based in San Francisco, and is a senior manager marketing operations. And Colby has been a marketing ops manager and director at several companies, including Domo, Relationship One, Koali, Count, and now Colby is at Lively, and we're super excited to have him on the show. Colby, how are you doing?
Freaking fantastic for a Wednesday, man. Glad to be here. Love your shows that you're doing, the content that you guys are putting out in addition to everything else. So honored to be here.
Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate that and appreciate your time. Colby, let's get right into it. You're at Lively. Lively is, startup, maybe mid-size to small. I don't even know how they define these things anymore. What's small? What's medium? I mean, who knows? You're facing some interesting challenges there, and I think so. We had a conversation, 3-4 weeks ago, where we were talking about some of the challenges that you were having with your marketing technology stack and some of the kind of issues that you were facing. Maybe we'll just start there. Maybe you can kind of give us a picture of kind of what the challenges are that you're having right now, kind of how you're looking at them and kind of how you're facing them, and then maybe some solutions that you've come to that are unique to your company, your situation. And we can just start there and see where it takes us.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I joined Lively was because yes, we're a sub 200 person company right now,
Mm-hmm.
but we have enterprise level challenges and requirements from our marketing tech stack point of view, and also from the marketing ops team in general. And so one of the really challenging things is we market to both B2C and B2B, and our B2B is even segmented in really significant ways with brokers and direct to employer kind of go to market strategies, sales motions, things of that nature. And
Right.
so we're trying to balance an individual B2C customer's experience and all of their data and the flows required to make their experience superb, in addition to the other side of the coin with the direct to employer and B2B experience. And so that's right from the get-go has put a lot of requirements on the tools that we need and the integrations that we have to have with our marketing automation tool, with Salesforce, with attribution and everything like that. So it just creates this orders of magnitude layers of difficulty with everything, because it's like, okay, we can't have 3 Marketo instances right now or 3 Salesforce instances or anything like that.
Right.
We've got to figure out how to keep all of these people in their lanes with the tools that we have. So it's been a good challenge, but we've come up with some good solutions and simple ways of making it work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's go into that. So, maybe kind of give us if you can be vague if you need to be. Just I know I realize this is stuff that you're doing at your company, but maybe give us a picture of kind of the architecture, like makeup of your stack, and you can use generalities if you'd like to, and then kind of the specific challenges you're facing with your integrations and kind of what you're doing. I know you have an interesting way that you're tackling that, right?
Yes. Yeah. Since we're dealing in the healthcare space, we are very regulated, and we have to be SOC 2 compliant. We have to ensure that our PHI, PII, all of those different healthcare data requirements are met at every level.
Yeah.
And so even when we're setting up integrations for secure systems within our own company, it's not as easy as just saying, let's connect the APIs and let's push in all this data into Marketo and we're set.
Right.
Yep. Do all of these things meet our PHI requirements? And in order to do that, we've had to be selective with the tools that we've chosen. So we have a customer database platform that is serving as our intermediary between Marketo and our product for production servers.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us to identify and manage our B2C audience very well. I wouldn't say extremely well, but pretty freaking good. And it's just a great tool. In a way, it's like a different version of Adobe Analytics.
Right.
Not as much with everything on the web, but all of the unique triggers and actions that you can watch for in that tool within your production database, and then push those activities into your marketing automation platform, really enable you to message people, especially in our B2C audience, at the right time as they're progressing through the account sign up process, or doing significant steps in their account for the first time. And so it's been a tool that it's hard to manage, and it's a beast to keep your hands around. But at the same time, we really have no other way of doing it at the moment with our current resources and everybody's bandwidth.
Right.
And so, yeah, customer database platform is central to our B2C marketing activities and customer acquisition processes and everything, lifecycle marketing activities. And then outside of that, we're a pretty traditional tech stack. We're lucky that we have a tool like Visible, we use Salesforce, demand-based, lots of different features within demand-based, and then Path Factory, and there's probably even a tool that I'm forgetting, but demand-based and Path Factory have been really powerful tools for us on the B2B side.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Man, that's a big stack. I mean, I think you're the unique combination of that B2C, B2B, and then tacking on that healthcare element on top. So I think you're definitely living in a level of sophistication when it comes to marketing ops that I think a lot of people listening can learn from. Talk about, I think, you mentioned you're using a CDP, which is great. Implementation of all this. How are you guys getting that done? I mean, we've talked to tons of marketers who just, man, this is a huge, huge challenge. And I think it requires a ton of resources. How are you able to accomplish that at Lively? Like, how are you making that happen?
We have a great relationship with our COO, who is over our engine. So relationships is how you get that done, and making a very clear business case of why this has to be a priority for engineering, why it has to be a priority for marketing, IT, security, legal. And just by the nature of our industry alone, and with the experience that our founders have in this industry, they understand that there's really no room for one team to not support another. Because if we don't have all of our compliance ducks in a row, then we can't move forward with everything that we need to do with engineering. Legal can't approve it and allow us to move forward, which makes our business grind to a halt. So just by nature of our business alone, our COOs are like, or our COO is just a nonstop barrier smasher, and making sure everybody is collaborating. We're very, very strict on our OKRs every quarter as a company and as teams, and ensuring that they align with the company objectives. So yeah, that without that, I don't think it would be as efficient or even possible.
So deeply entrenched with the CEO, who, I think you just mentioned this, is over engineering. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, not necessarily. He might not actually be over engineering. We've had some changes, structural changes. So I don't know if he's actually over it, but he's responsible for getting everything done with it. He's the main man to go to if
it's the barrier smasher. Yeah.
Yep.
Man, he's
an awesome guy.
Well, first off, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams that we talk to and market. I mean, I'm trying to talk to as many people as I can every day. Colby, what do you suggest for teams that don't have that barrier smasher? Like, what should they do? How should they approach this? I mean, you have a long history in marketing ops. Like, maybe you can look back at a time where you didn't have that kind of support, because I see the teams without that level of integration with like engineering teams or somebody there really high up who's saying this that needs to happen and here's why. What do you recommend that they do? How do they handle that?
Oh, that is an excellent question. There's been something that we've been trying lately, and using it as kind of a guide for everything that we're doing. I got it from a consultant that's kind of doing some leadership stuff with us, and they don't have a term for it. I called it like the 4 pillars of prioritization or something like that, because there is no official name, but it's basically categorizing all of your initiatives by what should you actively be driving, what should you actively be driving? What are you currently driving? What are you monitoring? and what should you be monitoring. And just by segmenting all of our tasks in those 4 buckets, and first getting in alignment with leadership on, okay, this is what marketing ops is driving, this is what they should be driving. I would say those are probably the 2 most critical columns, because when you can show your executive team, your boss, whoever it is that you need to get on board with a certain initiative, that, this is what we're doing right now, but really this is what we should be doing, and here's the business case and reasons why we should be driving this, then all of a sudden you get their full attention, and it's like, okay, you've got our support. Here, you can talk to so and so in engineering. You can talk to this other person here. We'll give you resources, and you can work into their, Scrum cycle or whatever it is that they're doing to manage their time and project. So I'd say just, organizing yourself in a way that shows that if you take a step back or a higher viewpoint of it, of you're thinking strategically,
Right.
and you're thinking in a way that's going to have a significant impact on the business. And an executive isn't going to ignore that ever, at least if they're doing a good job.
So those 4 P's of prioritization. So, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you don't have every single thing in place to be able to do kind of every exact thing you want, but I mean, you're kind of going through those 4 P's, and yeah, I love that. I think, focusing on what you can control, and like you said, thinking strategically. I mean, on our last episode, we talked to Jason Wilson. He's an advertising agency executive, VP, senior vice president, was talking about how, like, he likes to think of things starting backwards, right? Start backwards from the goal instead of starting like with the tools and kind of figuring out all the problems you have at the beginning. Like, start with, okay, here's what we're actually trying to accomplish. So I love the 4 P's of prioritization. Colby, maybe you can
100%.
go to the business case a little bit, specific to kind of what you're trying to solve. I love what you said when you were talking about kind of your relationship with the COO, making that business case crystal clear for the integration of technology. What is, how would you describe, or how would you describe, or how would you, talk about the business case that you brought to your COO, or just in general terms, like, what is that business case for you? I mean, how would you bring words and clarify that?
No, I'd say tying it all back to everything that matters to the board and to your executive team.
Got it.
Yeah. When you're talking about the need for a specific tool, making the case and providing the documentation and the reasoning in a format that is going to make sense to an executive, and not a, hey, we need this cool tool to do attribution for the marketing team to see which campaigns were successful.
Right.
Like, an executive or a board is going to be like, well, we want to see pipeline being generated. We want to see velocity. We want to see how your money is being spent. What's your average cost per lead, average cost per opportunity, like those types of things.
Right.
So if you can tie those needs directly to, or the way that this tool is going to help you support those critical KPIs, then it's much easier to make that case. And if it's something that's going to amplify the amount of work that your team can do with getting campaigns out the door and things like that, it makes it much easier, I'd say.
Can you give us an example? And again, you can use generalities here if needed, of maybe where you had to make that case and kind of what your argument was, and maybe what type of tool it was.
Yeah, we just recently went through this with Visible's data warehouse.
Oh, so awesome. Okay, great.
We don't have a ton of visibility into our B2C buyer's journey, just because we don't push that data into Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know, because of the cookie that we have with Visible's JavaScript on our website, that all of that B2C data is being collected, but we didn't have access to it. And it's an extra $10,000, $15,000 or something like that, depending on your traffic, to get access to that data warehouse. And so one of the things that our board is requesting is to understand where our B2C customer base is coming from a channel perspective. And so it's a pretty simple example, but a really easy use case,
right,
and business case of saying, well, we have this tool, we have Visible already for our B2B needs, but if we get the data warehouse, that'll give us complete access to all of this data that they're tracking and more, stuff that we can't even take advantage of yet. But it will give us what we need to understand our B2C journey and be able to export that to, another data warehouse, visualize it in a BI tool, and things of that nature.
No, that's a great example, I think, and a great one because it's like on top of having a tool like Visible, it's also like it's a adding a feature to a tool that you already have. So an even more challenging argument probably to the to the C-suite of the board. It's like, hey, we have this tool, but in order to get access to this piece, we need to add this other thing. But no, I think that's great. Like aligning it to, what does the board care about? To that point, I mean, you bring up data, you bring up analytics, and talking about customer journey and like understanding journeys in terms of and it doesn't have to be Lively, it could be maybe some other places that you've worked at. Data analytics, for marketing ops and like data visualization. And I mean, and you're free to speak either B2B, B2C. Can you give some like really good examples of some wins that you've been able to derive from, from analytics or from marketing tools that have really like, in your mind, like helped really drive the business forward?
Yeah, I think our most recent reporting period, our end of quarter results is probably the best thing for that, or the best example of that, because we're using so many different tools,
right?
Aggregating all of demand bases, ABM campaign data, all of our LinkedIn data, everything like that into a single place, and being able to tell the story of, hey, is ABM doing what we want it to do,
right,
in terms of lead generation and pipeline generation? And it's kind of a messy process for us right now because we're still doing a lot of exports and things like that manually.
Right, sure.
But we're still able to aggregate it in a way and visualize it in our own BI tool that will show and tell the story of, well, for example, we're getting a lot of views and kind of brand awareness with demand base in our ABM campaigns, but it's not converting to leads as much as we'd like. And we're actually seeing, and this is all thanks to Visible too,
right,
we're actually seeing a significant amount of leads, MQLs, pipeline, et cetera, come in from our traditional channels: paid search, organic search, and paid social. And so that seeing that picture, being able to paint that picture of, we're spending a lot here. Are we really seeing what we want? Maybe not. And we're not spending a ton here in these channels, but we're still getting some very good results.
Right.
We need to pivot and focus on these channels to get even more. And demand base, there's so many ins and outs of how the tech stack works together. So the other thing that demand base does is enriches all of our data as soon as it comes into our database.
Yeah.
And so we can see company size and things like that. And, we can see, hey, we're getting a lot of MQLs from our affiliate channels, but they're not necessarily converting to opportunities as much, and the company size isn't where we want it to be. So it's just orchestrating and taking advantage of every single little data point from all of these different systems. And thankfully, a lot of this can be aggregated in Salesforce and then exported to your BI tool and everything for fancier dashboards and whatnot.
Right.
But it's just, it requires a really good understanding of what data you have available in each system and how to orchestrate that in a way to tell the story of ABM's working, ABM's not working, organic's working, it's not. Here's how they're working. And it's a cool problem to have. Cool challenge.
The stuff that's not working. So, I mean, this is a great answer, and I think a fantastic use of analytics, especially in your business case. Do you share the stuff that's not working with the C-level?
Yeah. We have like there's 8 points. I wish I had this doc open somewhere, but we have 8 points of things that we need to have for when we're creating this report. 2 of the points are: 1, tell the truth; 2, tell the whole truth. So there's no sugarcoating.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the
for better or for worse,
you give that realistic picture. I think that's incredibly rare. I mean, I've done marketing analytics at huge companies, multi-billion-dollar companies. they do not like to share what's not working. I can tell you right now, they don't like to share what's working. So let this be
Maybe
an
it has
example.
something to, it might have something to do with our size. That's
Yeah,
one of the
yeah, yeah,
reasons
yeah.
why I love that 200 to 300 person company size,
Totally.
because it's like we've got to succeed. And in order to succeed, egos have to be put on the shelf. And rather than gut feelings and egos helping make decisions, we need to let data drive decisions. And I think that, and I try to do my best also to put my ego on the shelf and be like, I want to make y'all look good. I want to
Yeah,
make us
yeah,
look
yeah.
good in every way possible. But at the same time, like we have to, we've got to use the data to make the right decision. And whether that's for better or for worse in the short term, in the long term, it will be better.
No, I think what you just said right there is salient wisdom in terms of like not letting your ego get in the way of getting better. And I think that's a big miss that I've seen as I've done marketing analytics at many companies. Is, man, it is so tempting to go in and just, it's like where's Waldo with the highlights. You're just kind of combing through and finding, oh, here's one, and now put it in the deck and show everything that we're doing, because as you probably know, Colby, like marketing teams, they kind of feel back up against the wall, especially in sales driven organizations. So when you go in and say, hey, that money we spent on this campaign, yeah, actually didn't work, the response can be not great. How do you deal
Yeah.
with that? How do you deal with that, Colby? Like when you go into those meetings, and I love that you have that environment at Lively, and I think, people listening, take that to heart. I mean, take that, and I think I firmly believe that everybody should take this attitude. Marketing teams should take it in, even if it means hard conversations. How do you deal with those hard conversations though? Like, what's the response?
Oh, it's disconnecting from reactions.
Yeah.
Um, we, there was an incident a couple months ago where we wanted to launch a campaign um, targeting some people that hadn't yet subscribed to our email. And one of the executives really lost it and was like, we shouldn't be emailing anybody that hasn't subscribed. We shouldn't be doing these other things. And I was like,
Uh,
and at first, it's like, it scared the crap out of me because, like, man, what am I forgetting?
right,
What
right,
am I
right.
not aware of? What did I miss that I should know? Um, and disconnecting myself from that situation. Like there's some really good Jocko Willink podcast on this.
Extreme
The guy
ownership,
who
yeah.
extreme ownership guy. Yep,
Yep,
yep.
yep.
So luckily I had listened to like his podcast on that like the day before, a couple days before this
That's
happened. So I was like,
awesome.
okay, don't panic. Let's disconnect from the situation. Um, and reviewed all of the can spam laws, helped share the right information with them, looped in the legal team as
Right.
well to say like, look, here's best practice. Yes, we want to email people that have subscribed to our emails for sure, and we don't want to spam people in any way. So it's good that you're concerned about this. I would be equally concerned if you were just like email everybody every day.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so disconnecting and really just taking the time to analyze the situation, slow down your thought process, and provide a logical, coherent response to things will also help diffuse that emotion. Um, and luckily, it's probably easier for me to do that virtually. In person, it's probably a lot harder to
Sure.
keep your emotions in check and things like that. But when you've got time to process, disconnect yourself from a heated situation and then put forth a calm, you know, reason and logical explanation for the results, for the data you're sharing, for the process that you're initiating, it goes a long way.
Yeah, much easier said than done, for sure. Nobody
It
nobody
takes
wants
practice.
if a mistake is made, your first inclination is never to be like, "Yep, that was 100% my fault," but probably the right path. And I think in the long run, to your point, that gains you respect, and it creates an environment where everybody can improve. Because if everyone's just hiding stuff all the time, like nothing gets better.
Yep, yep.
Colby, let's talk about marketing ops in general. And you shared some incredible insights on kind of your current situation. What do you see as kind of the biggest challenges if you look out into the marketing operations, revenue operations, like whatever it is, or even marketing in general? I think you've been across enough companies now to kind of have a good picture of that. What are things that are kind of frustrating you in this space? What are kind of you look out there and you're still frustrated. You feel like there isn't a solution to this problem. What are those things for you? Maybe you can articulate those and kind of your thinking around those things.
I would separate it into two categories. One category is with the technology itself.
Okay.
A lot of these, and even today, like Marketo and Salesforce and things like that, getting data into them for somebody that doesn't know how to code APIs and things like that is still hard to do and still requires help from very technical people, usually engineers.
Yeah.
And like to my example, if you don't have a barrier smasher, it can be hard to get help to get the data that you need in there.
Right.
So there is that just what's the term that everybody coding with clicks, like tools that allow you to create that code, those connections, those integrations with clicks. Still, at least in my experience, I don't feel like it's to a level where any marketing operations person can integrate any tool or the most used tools with just, or at least maybe it's more like, the in-depth server side of things, production servers, product data, and things like that. Unless you've got a really cool product tool or a segment or something like that, it's really hard to do still.
Yeah.
And we need drag and drop stuff that's easier to make those matches and get that data into the needed systems.
Right.
The other side, the strategic side, is I still, in many cases, marketing ops is and can be viewed as just a service center still in many ways.
Gotcha.
Yeah, people can go and it's like IT. I'm going to put in a ticket, request some data, request a campaign to be created, a landing page to be created. But a lot of times we're not included in those strategic level meetings and initiatives where, because of our familiarity with the data and the systems, and since so many of us come from digital marketing backgrounds, web design, web coding backgrounds, there's so much value that could be added there that could help not only guide our strategies in a more efficient and better way, but also to make sure that we're doing things in the most efficient way as possible so that it's going to be easy to launch these initiatives. And so I think marketing ops still needs a bigger seat at the leadership level depending on your size of company, I guess. Yeah.
Jumping off those 2 points, let's start with the first one. I mean, you're bringing up, this is a problem this is what our company exists for, data join, integration. What's the future state in your mind when marketing teams are able to solve that problem? Because I think, you have enough experience in this space. You've seen kind of, and even what you're doing right now, I think you guys are at a level of sophistication and interconnectedness that not a lot of companies have because you have that barrier smasher and because you have that support. What does future state look like? Because I think one of the challenges that happens to a lot of marketers and maybe marketing ops people too is that they're kind of sitting there going, yeah, I would love this, but what's the outcomes that I'm going to kind of have when I'm in that future state? And so they feel like, well, that's fine. I'll just kind of deal with what I've got. Maybe you can help bring some light to that, or bring like, here's kind of what it looks like, and here's what the benefit is, and this is why you want kind of this future state. Maybe you can bring some thoughts to that.
Yeah, I read something a while ago about I can't remember the exact term. It was like database-less technologies or platforms. Kind of the flow or the direction that some marketing technologies are going in to move away from having to have a database to use all of the functions within a tool.
Interesting.
And I could see, it's almost like the second step in a customer database platform where you're going to have all of your data, or maybe it's just a easier to use customer database platform, but you're going to have all of your data from your production servers, from your website, from Google Analytics, Salesforce, et cetera, all accessible in a single platform. And you're going to be able to build your segments with the trait, with the fields from each of these systems without having to manually import everything into it first. Probably a total pipe dream. But it's got to get to a point where it's easier to access all of the data from all of your systems in a single location.
I feel like you're pretty close to that based on kind of what you're describing compared to a lot of folks. What benefit? I mean, maybe you're not 100%. I don't think anybody is. To your point, what benefit? What tangible benefits are you seeing based on kind of the setup that you have? Like you have some level of integration, right? You have some systems that talk to each other. You have engineers that have built, integrations and connectors between your product data and your CDP and your CRM and all that. What benefits do you feel like you're experiencing that maybe some others aren't because you have that?
That real time communication with your customers.
Okay.
I'd say that is the absolute game changer, because rather than importing a list of, hey, these are people that are closed won opportunities and we think they've been active on our website, and trying to join Excel sheets together and upload into Eloqua or anything like that. We can go into our customer database platform and we can see, okay, here's all the trades that are firing, and you can even see the packages that are being delivered, so you know exactly each data point that you're getting. And then the level of personalization that you can do within not only your campaigns but your emails too. It makes tools. Movable ink is one of the tools where you can use an API to bring in like real-time information into your emails.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to do,
Right.
so hard to test and be confident that it's going to be right. But with a tool like a customer database platform, or the next evolution of that, you can see that data flow. You know exactly what's coming in. You can put contingency plans in place, and not only can you send them to the right nurture tracks, email campaigns, LinkedIn targeting, retargeting campaigns, but you can do everything with your personalization too in your emails, so that when that customer gets a message from you, it's much more relevant. And then all your metrics just shoot through the roof from there for your customer interactions.
From a 30,000 foot level, that, I mean, you brought up personalization. You brought up like being hyper specific, hyper relevancy to the customer, right? Do you think that makes a huge difference on your business? And if so, why? Like that level?
Yeah, if you look at our company NPS scores and things like that, I don't know the exact numbers in the healthcare space for HSA companies, but we're like double what the average company is with their NPS scores.
Wow.
Yeah, our customers freaking love it.
That's crazy.
And a lot of it is to do with an amazing customer success team. Like our CS team is it's the best in the industry by far. But then we're making sure those initial interactions with our customers are the best we can possibly make them with real-time data, essentially.
Right. Great
there's
personal
a ton we need to do,
yeah.
But we have great personal interactions from beginning to end.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
That is an incredible future state. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of thinking, why should I go through the pain? I mean, you can come back and listen to that last sentence. I appreciate that, Colby. Your second part, you talked about, and my mind is blanking right there. Repeat your second part that you talked about. You had your second frustration.
Yeah. The kind of the strategic role of
That's
marketing
right.
ops. Yeah.
Strategic. John talked about that as well on our first episode. I'm sure this is something that you're pursuing, internally at Lively, that you've kind of been trying to evangelize. What suggestions do you have for marketing operations folks who maybe see themselves in sort of a IT of, I'm going to use this phrase again, so don't be offended, anyone who's a marketing ops, IT of marketing. I've heard this phrase before. I've heard, they're the IT of marketing. And what you described, I think, is kind of what, when people think marketing ops, I think sometimes they think of that. I think and I know definitely from talking to folks like you, 100% not true. How do you make that change? If you're somebody who's in a position who's not feeling like you're strategically involved, how can you make progress or make steps to change that?
Yeah, one is just overall assertiveness with when you want to be involved in those things. I think generally our personality type in marketing ops is more of can be more of like I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to interject myself too much. At least that's kind of been my experience with working with a lot of marketing ops people, and really making a conscious effort to to be more disagreeable, to speak up more. When somebody asks for a report, like if you're doing end of quarter reporting, you don't just send them the graphs and charts, you send them takeaways and recommendations and potential next steps and things that you can do to help drive those next steps, people that you can talk with to help make those things happen. So again, it's kind of, there's a, I can't remember the author of the book, but the book is called, I think your next 5 moves or your 5 next steps,
Oh, okay.
something to that effect.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
What, not a super great book, but I loved the idea, or at least the mentality that he shared of whenever you're doing something or you're creating a plan, don't just think of what you're doing now for it. Think of what are your next 5 steps going to be with this? And doing that, it's impossible to not get noticed and to not influence your other team members when you're sharing that level of analysis and that really that passion that you have for making everything work better and the team be better. And so, yeah, assertiveness, a little bit of disagreeableness, and then sharing those next 5 steps, I think is a great way of helping people have their eyes opened that, well, marketing ops, they're not just IT. They don't just give us data and things like that. They can actually help us make better decisions. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, strategy in its essence is, making like decision making, like here's what we're going to do, here's what we're not going to do, and why. And so I think the better that you can articulate that in ways that you just mentioned, I think you gave some great suggestions on how to do that. I think the more strategic you can become, being able to say no, like you said, be assertive. No, we're not going to do this, and here's why in the context of the business. I think that's great insight. Well, Colby, we appreciate your time very, very much. One other last question as we kind of come up on our time here. As you look into the future of marketing ops, of marketing tech, and you're coming into a new organization maybe, or maybe you're starting a new job, how are you thinking about things like what are the first kind of steps that you would take maybe in a new marketing ops role looking, 5 years in the future? What are the top priorities for you? What are the challenges that like day one you're going after and trying to solve maybe in a new role, and looking kind of where marketing ops is headed in general, like maybe looking over the next 5 years?
Very good question. That's deep.
Take your time to think a little bit. Sorry, I'm throwing the deep curveball at you.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's awesome. I think you will see marketing ops be taking a much bigger leadership role in at least the digital marketing side of your demand gen teams and things like that.
Gotcha.
I'm convinced that maybe it's not CMO level that you're going to see marketing ops people going into, maybe the CRO position, but I still, that whole argument of everybody's going to be a revenue operations team and you're all going to tie everything together from beginning to end. Like I get that, and I fully buy into that vision, but I think you have to, I don't know, there's a certain maturity level that a company has to get to before that makes sense and before you can really take advantage of it.
Right.
And it's just so many smaller companies. I think it's harder to get to that. Right. Maybe I've just missed the boat or don't understand it fully, which is likely the case.
I don't think so, but yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, I think more of that leadership, strategic approach to it, but then just stepping into a new role and a new marketing operations job. I think really it's the very basics. It's understanding how well are our primary systems talking to each other?
Yeah.
Is the data clean and reliable? And are there any trust issues that sales and marketing have with the data in those systems?
Right.
Because if there are trust issues, if somebody's complaining about the lead handoff process or MQLs aren't qualified enough at this point, things like that, then you're not going to do yourself any favor by ignoring those things and just starting something brand new that you think is shiny and cool. So you have to start by getting trust. You have to start with the basics of clean data, good integrations, good lead handoff processes, And once you have trust built up in those areas, then you can move on to get bigger things. But first, yeah, you got to put money in the bank with your trust with the other team members.
I love that. I love that. Well, that's great advice, Colby. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on the show, talking marketing ops. If you're listening, you can hear every week from people just like Colby, talking about marketing technology, how to best take advantage and use marketing tech, analytics, and data in your work and everything that you do in marketing. We're doing episodes every week of The Marketer's Best Friend. You can tune in. You can find us on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, Marketer's Best Friend. Links in the description. We appreciate all of you listening and have a great day.